Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today I've got a Bridgeford Foods tip of the month for you, and it's a good one. And this one will make you a better fisherman, and it will equate to you catching more fish and missing less bites. And it's a simple tip, guys. And the tip is watch your line. Watch your line. I can't say that enough. It is so much more important to watch your line than to wait to feel the bite in your rod tip. If you wait to feel the bite in your rod tip, I guarantee you've missed a large percentage of your bites. You may still catch those fish because eventually you feel them on your rod, but a lot of fish will pick up your bait and spit it out before you ever even knew it. You know, as examples, you can see this when, you're sight fishing. A lot of times you'll see the fish bite your bait and you never even felt it. But if you watched your line, you'll see the bite in your line a lot more than you will when you feel it in your rod. So it's really important to do this. It really doesn't matter what baits you're throwing. I mean, top waters probably don't count because you can see the bite. But if you're dragging a jig or swimming a swim bait or fishing a jerk bait or fishing a crankbait, a lot of times the bite, you'll see a slight twitch in your line, but you won't feel it in the rod. So if you're watching your line and you know what a bite looks like in your line, you can set the hook at that point. And maybe some of those bites were false bites. Maybe you bumped into a rock or hit a stump or clipped a piece of grass. But if you set the hook, you still are going to get the fish when it was a fish. If you set the hook and it's not a fish, no big deal. Hook sets are free, as they say. But it's really important to watch your line. There's a couple of things I recommend doing anytime you're watching your line. One, you're always watching for bites. So if your line twitches in a manner that's not natural, it probably was a bite. But if your line, say, you're fishing a bottom bait, if your line goes flat, it means you hit the bottom. But what you can utilize that for is to figure out how deep you're fishing. And this is a really good tip when fishing from shore or fishing without depth finders. If you make a cast out, count it down. If it goes down and it hits the bottom at a count to 10 and you think you're roughly in 10 feet of water, as you work that bait back, you're going to know roughly how deep you are based on watching your line. So, if you throw it way out and it drops quick and it hits, the bottom in a couple of seconds, and as you work your bait back, it keeps falling, you're coming down a drop off. But you can learn that if you pay attention to the line because you're seeing how much line is being utilized to get your bait to a further depth. So that's one thing. Not only can you detect bites, you can detect how deep you're fishing. The other is you can limit the amount of snags you're going to get. And what I mean by that is if you're watching your line and you're fishing around, say, a big fallen submerged tree, well, if you're watching your line, that will help you detect when your bait is in that tree. And therefore, you may not set the hook on what is actually the tree because you're aware of your surroundings. You're aware of what your line is doing as you're bringing your bait through the tree. So those are some reasons I really like to watch the line. Ultimately, it comes down to because you're going to be able to detect more bites that you're not feeling in your rod, which means you're missing less fish. A couple of quick tips you can do to help you watch your line. One, if you like throwing braided lines, you can throw high vis colors. High vis yellow is a great color, or white. It really makes it easy to see your line. A lot of times if you're throwing, say, a weightless wacky rig, you can throw your bait up under a dock, and as your bait's falling, you'll see your line zip out to one side. You never felt the bite in your rod, but you'll see your line move. So high vis lines are great for that. The other is so that you can, again, it comes down to knowing what depth you're fishing, right? So if you know that you're in roughly 4 feet of water, then, when you make a cast out, if you think your line is falling more than 4 feet, it's probably because a fish ate it and is swimming off with it and you just didn't know it. So if you're familiar with the surroundings you're in and you have a depth finder, or you're on the bank and you're fishing into 4 feet of water or making a cast into 10 feet of water, but it feels like 15 feet of line was used to get your bait to the bottom, it's probably because that fish has picked it up and taken it. So it's important to know roughly how deep you're fishing. That really helps with this, with the idea of watching your line as well. So that's my tip for you guys. I hope it was helpful. Stay tuned, more tips coming your way.